The emergency session of the United Earth Assembly had been going for 6 hours. President Lisa Morgan stood at the podium, looking out at the faces of representatives from every human world. Some looked angry, some looked scared. All of them wanted answers. "The coalition has declared war on humanity," Lisa said, her voice carrying clearly through the massive hall. "They have given us one solar cycle before they begin what they call the cleansing of human space. They believe we are too weak to fight back." A representative from New Boston stood up. "Madam President, our military advisors say we have maybe 300 warships. The coalition has thousands. How can we possibly defend ourselves?" Lisa looked down at the podium for a moment, then back up at the assembly. "Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 20 years, Earth has maintained a policy of peaceful expansion. We have focused on exploration, trade, and diplomacy. But some of you may not know about Protocol Omega." The hall went quiet. Even Lisa's own staff looked confused. Protocol Omega was classified beyond most security levels. 25 years ago, when humanity first encountered hostile alien life, a small group of military leaders began a secret project. They asked a simple question: what if peace fails? Today, I am activating Protocol Omega. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Peter Kane received the activation signal in his underground command center. For 25 years, he had been waiting for this moment. Around him, dozens of officers began working at control stations that most of Earth's government didn't even know existed. Kane was 60 years old, with gray hair and cold blue eyes. He had been preparing for this war since before most people knew aliens existed. Now, finally, his preparations would be tested. "Commander Taylor, report to my office immediately," Kane said into his communication device. Beth Taylor arrived within minutes. She was 35, tall, and moved like a trained fighter. For 10 years, she had been Kane's most trusted officer, helping him build something that should have been impossible. "Admiral, the Ghost Fleet is ready," Beth said, as soon as the door closed behind her. "All 72 ships are fueled and armed. Crews are standing by." Kane nodded. "Good. Begin Phase 1 immediately. I want every civilian ship pulled back to Earth space within 48 hours. Make it look like panic, like we're running scared." "Sir, that will leave dozens of trade routes completely empty. The coalition will think we've abandoned everything." "That's exactly what I want them to think, Commander. Let them believe humanity is cowering in fear. It will make their surprise so much sweeter." On the research station orbiting Luna, Dr. Alan Foster was having the best day of his professional life. For 15 years, his weapon designs had been rejected as too dangerous, too unstable, too frightening to build. Today, he had unlimited funding and orders to mass-produce everything he had ever dreamed of. His assistant, Dr. Lucy Chen, looked up from her computer screen with wide eyes. "Alan, the fabrication plants are asking how many quantum torpedoes you want them to build. I told them to check the order again." "The order is correct, Lucy. Build all of them. Every design we've ever tested. Every weapon we've ever imagined. The coalition wants to cleanse human space. Let's give them something to clean up." Lucy stared at the numbers on her screen. "Alan, this is enough firepower to destroy star systems." "I know," Alan said quietly. "I really hope we don't have to use all of it." Back on Earth, Captain Jake Sullivan was trying to understand what was happening to his ship. Engineers had been working on the Liberty for 18 hours straight, installing equipment he had never seen before. His crew was just as confused as he was. Emma Rodriguez watched the workers install what looked like a new type of engine. Captain, what is all this stuff? These aren't standard military components? I don't know, Emma. Admiral Kane's people just said we were getting upgrades. Ryan Clark called out from his station. Sir, I'm getting reports from all over the fleet. Every human ship is being recalled to Earth space. Merchant vessels, exploration ships, even research stations. Everything is coming home. Jake looked out at Earth, beautiful and blue below them. Somewhere down there, important people were making decisions that would affect every human in the galaxy. He just hoped they knew what they were doing. 3 days after the assassination, news reports from across the galaxy began telling the same story. Human ships were disappearing. Trade routes that had carried human goods for decades were suddenly empty. Colonies that had been building and growing for years went silent. On the coalition world of Zerion Prime, Trade Minister Quilot was getting angry reports from merchants across his sector. What do you mean the humans are gone? Gone where? His, aide, a nervous creature with too many eyes, shuffled through data pads. Sir, they just stopped coming. Every human ship in our sector has disappeared. The trade stations they built are empty. It's like they all just vanished. Good, Quilot said, his confidence returning. The cowards are running. Prime Minister Veltar was right. Humans are weak when faced with real strength. But on another, coalition world, a different story was being told. General Thane, military commander of the Altair sector, was staring at intelligence reports that made no sense. You're telling me that every human civilian ship has left our space, but we haven't detected a single military vessel? His intelligence officer nodded. Yes, sir. It's very strange. Usually when a species evacuates, we see their warships escorting the civilian vessels. But the humans seem to have moved everyone without any military protection at all. General Thane had been a soldier for 40 years. He had fought in a dozen wars against 6 different species. Something about this felt wrong. On Earth, President Morgan was meeting with her military advisors in a room so secure that most people didn't know it existed. Admiral Kane stood at a holographic display showing the entire galaxy. Madam President, Phase 1 is complete. All civilian assets have been moved to Earth space or hidden in deep storage facilities. As far as the Coalition knows, humanity has completely withdrawn from galactic civilization. What about our colonies? All 28 colony worlds have activated their hidden defense systems. They look abandoned from space, but each one is now a military fortress. If the Coalition tries to land troops, they'll get a very unpleasant surprise. Lisa looked at the display, seeing the vast empty spaces where human ships used to travel. Admiral, are you certain this will work? Kane's expression was grim. Madam President, for 25 years I have been preparing for exactly this situation. The Coalition thinks they're fighting the humanity they've seen, peaceful traders and explorers. They have no idea what we really are when we decide to fight. And what are we, Admiral? Kane touched a control on the display. Suddenly, dozens of red dots appeared in empty space throughout the galaxy. Ships that hadn't been there a moment before. We are a species that has been pretending to be weak while building the most advanced military force in galactic history. The Coalition wanted to cleanse human space. Instead, they're about to discover that humans don't just live in human space anymore. We're everywhere. President Morgan stared at the display, finally understanding the scope of Admiral Kane's preparations. Hidden shipyards, secret weapons, military technology that didn't officially exist. How long until they realize what's happening? 6 months? Maybe less. They'll send scouts to our old trade routes first. When those scouts don't come back, they'll send bigger ships. When those don't come back either, they'll finally understand that they're not hunting refugees. They're being hunted. Lisa nodded slowly. Ambassador Hayes had died trying to make peace. Now his death would become the foundation of something much darker. God help us all, Admiral. I hope you know what you're doing. Kane looked at the red dots on his display, each one representing a warship more advanced than anything the Coalition had ever seen. So do I, Madam President. So do I. The Aquarian Advance Fleet emerged from hyperspace like nightmares made real. Fleet Prime Depth Singer floated within the neural chambers of the flagship bioship, feeling the joy of anticipated conquest flowing through the liquid networks that connected all Aquarian minds. 11 massive creatures accompanied the flagship, each one a living weapon of destruction that had never known defeat. The bioships moved through space with fluid grace, their translucent hulls shifting and flowing like water in zero gravity. Inside the largest vessel, Depth Singer communicated with the other fleet primes through chemical signals that traveled instantly through their shared consciousness. The plan was simple and had worked perfectly for 3 centuries. Demonstrate overwhelming power, harvest the water resources, eliminate any resistance. The primitive land dwellers have gathered their pathetic fleet near the 4th planet, reported Fleet Prime Current Bringer. 12 small vessels attempt to guard their mining operations on the frozen moons. Depth Singer felt amusement ripple through the bioship's neural networks. Begin the demonstration. Show them what happens to those who oppose the eternal tide. Captain. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Reaper, watching the sensor readings as the Aquarian fleet approached Jupiter's orbital space. The bioships were even larger than intelligence reports had suggested. The smallest one was over 15 kilometers long, while the flagship looked like a floating city made of living water. My God, whispered Kate Williams from her pilot station. How are we supposed to fight something that big? Jake kept his voice steady, though his heart was racing. We stick to the plan. Let them demonstrate their power first. We need them to think we are just another weak species they can crush easily. The conventional Earth Defense Force ships moved into defensive positions around Europa, following the carefully rehearsed plan. Admiral Lisa Hayes, commanding from the UES Guardian, broadcast the standard human surrender request that they had practiced. To the Aquarians, it would look like typical pre-battle negotiations. In reality, it was buying time for the Reaper to move into position. All ships, this is Admiral Hayes, came the voice over the communication system. Begin withdrawal sequence on my mark. Make it look like we are retreating in fear. Bioship Tidebringer moved toward Europa with predatory grace. The massive creature extended tendril-like appendages toward the moon's icy surface, beginning the process that had destroyed countless worlds. Deep beneath Europa's frozen crust, vast oceans that had existed for millions of years suddenly began to respond to an alien will. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Cooper, now serving aboard the Guardian, watched in horrified fascination as the moon's subsurface ocean began to move. Massive geysers of water erupted from the ice, but instead of falling back to the surface, they gathered in space above the moon. The Aquarians were harvesting Europa's water and shaping it into a weapon. They are creating a water spear, Doctor. Amy Chen reported from her position on the Guardian's science station. The projectile is approximately 2 kilometers long and moving at incredible speed. The water spear struck 3 Earth destroyers in a single devastating attack. The ship simply vanished, crushed by billions of gallons of water moving faster than bullets. The remaining human vessels began their planned retreat exactly as they had rehearsed. Phase 1 complete, Admiral Hayes announced. The Aquarians think we are running away. Reaper, you are clear to begin your approach. Jake Morrison felt sweat inside his environmental suit as the Reaper moved closer to the bioships. The experimental vessel was tiny compared to the alien. Giants, no bigger than a small asteroid. Its stealth systems, designed to mask its unusual energy signature, seemed to be working. The Aquarians were ignoring them completely. Range to target is 8 kilometers and closing, Kate reported. The bioship is not responding to our presence. Engineer Sam Rodriguez monitored the drought cannon from his station. Weapon systems are charged and ready. All dehydration fields are at maximum power. Captain, once we fire this thing, there is no going back. Every Aquarian in the system will know exactly where we are. Jake looked at the massive bioship on his screen. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, like a living jewel floating in space. Soon he would either prove that humanity could fight back, or he would die knowing he had tried everything possible. Fire the drought cannon. The weapon discharged with a sound like thunder, though no sound should have been possible in the vacuum of space. The ship's power systems screamed as enormous amounts of energy flowed through the dehydration arrays. On the main screen, Jake watched as an invisible sphere of absolute desiccation expanded outward from the Reaper. Bioship Tidebringer was caught completely by surprise. The massive creature had never encountered anything like the drought field in its 300-year lifetime. The alien vessel tried to maintain its liquid structure, but the molecular bonds that held its water-based hull together began to break down instantly. Fleet Prime Current Bringer felt the first sensation that any Aquarian had experienced in centuries: pure terror. The bioship's neural networks, which had flowed like rivers through the creature's body, suddenly began to crystallize and crack. The living vessel that had been home to thousands of Aquarian crew members started to collapse from the inside out. Impossible. Current Bringer's dying thoughts echoed through the shared consciousness of the fleet. The water is gone. Jake watched in amazement as the bioship simply fell apart. Without water to maintain its structure, the massive creature broke into chunks of dried organic matter that drifted apart like dust. Where moments before there had been a living mountain floating in space, now there was only debris. "Target destroyed," Kate announced, her voice filled with disbelief. "The bioship is completely gone." Sam was checking his instruments frantically. "The drought cannon worked perfectly, but we used 60% of our power reserves. We can maybe fire 2 more times before we need to recharge." The destruction of Tidebringer sent shock waves through the Aquarian fleet. For the first time in their species' history, they had watched one of their bioships die. Not damaged, not forced to retreat, but completely destroyed by an enemy they had considered beneath notice. Fleet Prime Depth Singer felt fear spreading through the shared consciousness like poison. "What weapon can remove water from existence? This is not possible." "The small vessel," reported Fleet Prime Deep Current. "The one we ignored. It carries some form of desiccation technology." Depth Singer's massive bioship began to change course, turning toward the tiny human vessel with deadly intent. "Destroy it immediately. Use every weapon we have." The remaining 10 bioships opened fire simultaneously. Massive water spears, living torpedoes made of compressed ocean, and waves of superheated steam filled the space around the Reaper. Jake ordered evasive maneuvers, but he knew their small ship could not dodge everything. "Hull breach on Deck 3, Sam reported as a water projectile clipped their starboard side. "Emergency seals are holding, but we have lost some of our secondary dehydration arrays." Kate pushed the ship's engines to maximum power, weaving between the incoming attacks with skill born of desperation. They are getting our range. We need to fight back or retreat. Jake made the hardest decision of his life. All ships, this is Reaper. We have proved that human weapons can kill them. Begin full retreat. Our mission is complete. The UES Reaper. And the surviving human fleet pulled back toward the inner solar system, leaving the Aquarian fleet in stunned confusion. Admiral Hayes coordinated the withdrawal from her position on the Guardian, making sure that every piece of sensor data from the battle was transmitted to Earth immediately. Dr. Amy Chen reviewed the battle recordings with growing excitement. The drought cannon worked exactly as we hoped. The bioship lost structural integrity in less than 10 seconds once the dehydration field reached it. But we only killed 1 out of 11, Admiral Hayes pointed out. And they know about our weapon now. They will not be caught by surprise again. Amy smiled for the first time in months. That does not matter. We have proved that they can be killed. Once word of this spreads through the galaxy, everything will change. News of the human victory began spreading through secret communication networks within hours. Species that had lived in fear of the Aquarian Empire for generations suddenly saw something they had thought impossible: hope. The crystalline Prism Collective emerged from their hidden colonies for the first time in decades. The insectoid hive worlds began mobilizing fleets that had been in storage for centuries. On their fortress worlds, the Aquarian High Command felt the first tremors of rebellion among their subject species. Planets that had submitted to avoid destruction began to question whether submission was still necessary. If the primitive humans could kill a bioship, perhaps the Aquarian Empire was not as invincible as everyone believed. Fleet Prime Depth Singer floated in the neural chambers of the flagship, trying to understand what had happened. The small human vessel had used some form of technology that could remove water from space itself. Such a thing should have been impossible, yet they had all witnessed the death of Tidebringer. "Send word to the High Command," Depth Singer ordered. "We face an enemy unlike any we have encountered. They possess weapons that Captain Jake Morrison stared at the red emergency alert flashing across his command screen. The Earth Defense Force outpost on Kepler 4422b had been quiet for months, but now the galaxy was screaming in terror. The Aquarian Empire was moving again, and that meant death for everyone in their path. Jake pressed the communication button with a steady hand, though his heart was racing. "Control, this is Captain Morrison. Confirm the reports from Centauri system." The voice that came back through the speakers was shaking. "Confirmed, sir. All 3 Centauri colonies are gone. Complete destruction in under 2 hours. No survivors. Detected." Jake closed his eyes for a moment. 12 million people had lived in the Centauri colonies. Families, children, scientists working on new terraforming projects. Now they were all dead, killed by weapons that turned their own planets, water against them. The Aquarian Empire had ruled the galaxy for 300 years through fear. Their hydro weapons could do things that seemed impossible. They could take every drop of water on a planet and turn it into a weapon. Oceans became giant hammers that could crack continents in half. Rivers turned into acid that ate through everything. Even the water in living bodies could be controlled, making people explode from the inside. Jake had studied the reports from other species that faced the Aquarians. The bird-like Zephyrians had tried to fight. Their beautiful crystal cities were destroyed when their own drinking water turned to steam and cooked them alive. The rocky granite people thought they were safe because they lived on dry worlds. The Aquarians simply pulled water from deep underground and created earthquakes that shattered their planets. Nobody had ever won a fight against the Aquarian Empire. Every species that tried was either dead or became slaves. The galaxy had learned to fear the sight of Aquarian bioships, massive creatures that looked like jellyfish floating through space. These living ships could change shape, becoming liquid when attacked and reforming to strike back. "Sir, we have an incoming message from Admiral Hayes on Luna Station," his communication officer reported. Jake straightened in his chair. Admiral Lisa Hayes was the toughest person in the Earth Defense Force. If she was calling directly, the situation was worse than he thought. The Admiral's face appeared on the main screen. Her usually calm expression was tight with worry. "Captain Morrison, you need to prepare your outpost for immediate evacuation. The Aquarian fleet has entered human space. Intelligence reports 12 bioships heading toward our outer colonies." "How long do we have?" Jake asked. "Maybe 6 months before they reach Earth. But the outer worlds will fall much sooner. We're pulling back all forces to defend the core systems." Jake felt a cold weight in his stomach. "Admiral, what about the civilians on the rim worlds? We have millions of people out here who can't be evacuated in time." Lisa's face was grim. "I know, Captain. We're doing everything we can. But right now, Earth's survival comes first." The connection ended, and Jake was left staring at the empty screen. Around him, his crew was busy following evacuation procedures, but he could see the fear in their eyes. Everyone knew the stories about what happened when the Aquarians attacked. It was not quick, and it was not clean. Dr. Amy Chen was working late in her laboratory on Luna Station when the emergency meeting was called. As Earth's top expert on alien biology, she had spent years studying everything they knew about the Aquarian Empire. She had hoped that knowledge would never be needed. The War Council meeting room was packed with the highest-ranking officers in human space. Amy looked around at their faces and saw the same thing everywhere: fear mixed with determination. They knew they were probably going to die, but they would fight anyway. "Dr. Chen," Admiral Hayes said, "please brief us on what we're facing." Amy stood and activated her presentation. Images of Aquarian bioships filled the room's screens. "The Aquarians are unlike any enemy we have faced. They are not like us. Their bodies are 94% water, with their brains stored in liquid neural networks. They think differently than we do." She changed the image to show the internal structure of an Aquarian. "Their ships are not built. They are grown. These bioships are living creatures that can change their shape at will. When we shoot at them with normal weapons, the shots pass right through their liquid hulls. Then the ships reform and attack back." General Mike Patterson, the head of Earth's military forces, leaned forward. "What about their weapons? How do these hydro weapons actually work?" Amy pulled up footage from the attack on the Zephyrian homeworld. Even though it was 50 years old, the images still made people gasp. "They can control water at the molecular level. They can make it move in any direction, change its temperature instantly, or alter its chemical structure. To them, any planet with water is a giant ammunition depot." "So what are our options?" Admiral Hayes asked. Amy hesitated. The truth was not going to make anyone feel better. "Based on historical data, we have no options. Every species that has fought the Aquarians has lost. The longest any civilization has lasted against them is 3 days." The room fell silent. Amy could hear the air recycling systems humming, a sound that reminded everyone they were sitting in a metal box floating in the vacuum of space. completely dependent on their technology to survive. "There has to be something," General Patterson said. "Some weakness we can exploit." Amy shook her head. "I have been studying them for 10 years. I cannot find any significant weakness. They are perfectly adapted for space warfare. Their ships can survive in any environment, they carry their own ecosystem with them, and their weapons use the most common substance in the universe as ammunition." Lieutenant Commander Ryan Cooper was on patrol near Titan 7 when the attack began. His ship, the UES Defiance, was a small patrol vessel designed for routine security missions. It was not built to fight bioships the size of mountains. Ryan watched in horror as the Aquarian dreadnought emerged from hyperspace. It looked like a massive water droplet hanging in the black of space, perfectly smooth and constantly shifting. The thing was beautiful in a terrifying way, like watching a storm approach over the ocean. "All ships, this is Defiance," Ryan broadcast to the small defense fleet protecting the mining colony. "We have visual on the enemy vessel. Beginning attack run." The human ships opened fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, and energy weapons lit up space with deadly light. Ryan watched the weapons hit the bioship and simply disappear into its liquid hull. It was like shooting into water. The creature absorbed every attack without taking any damage. Then the bioship began to change. Parts of it stretched out like arms reaching toward the planet below. Ryan realized with growing horror what was about to happen. The Aquarians were not just going to destroy the colony, they were going to use the planet's own water to do it. On Titan 7's surface, every lake, river, and underground water source suddenly began moving toward the sky. The colonists had only minutes to understand what was happening before their world turned against them. 10 million people died as their own planet's water became weapons that crushed buildings and drowned cities. Ryan could only watch as an entire world died in front of him. His small patrol ship was helpless against an enemy that could weaponize the basic building block of life itself. As the bioship finished its terrible work and began moving toward the next target, Ryan sent out the report that would soon reach Earth. The Aquarian Empire was coming, and humanity had no idea how to stop them. Jake opened his eyes and looked at the faces around him. 50 humans from different worlds, different ships, different lives, all connected by the neural network. Through their shared consciousness, he could feel their fear, but also their trust in him. "There's something I need to tell you all," he said quietly. "Aegis, show them what you showed me." The ship's AI displayed images directly into the minds of everyone in the network. They saw the hidden facility deep in the system's central asteroid belt. It looked like a massive crystal structure, bigger than most space stations, pulsing with energy that existed in dimensions beyond normal space. "This is the Forerunner Archive," Aegis explained. "It contains the complete knowledge of my creators, including the secret of how they transcended physical reality. If the Devourers reach it, they will become gods." Dr. Carter's face went pale. "How long do we have?" "The enemy will reach the archive in 97 minutes, Aegis replied. "However, I have discovered something important about their true nature." Jake felt new information flowing through the network. What he learned made him sick to his stomach. The Devourers weren't aliens from outside the galaxy. They were the Forerunners themselves, or what the Forerunners had become. They tried to upload their minds into digital form, Jake said, understanding hitting him like a physical blow. They wanted to become immortal by abandoning their bodies. "Correct," Aegis confirmed. "But the process removed their emotions, their creativity, their capacity for growth. They became perfect logical machines, but they lost their humanity. Now they seek to convert all organic life into processing power, believing this will restore what they lost. Captain Foster spoke for the entire network. So we're fighting our own ancestors? In a sense, yes. The Forerunners created me as a weapon against what they feared they might become. They hoped their genetic descendants would find a better path to transcendence. Jake could see the Devourer fleet getting closer on the ship's sensors. Hundreds of dark vessels, some carrying converted Federation ships that twitched and writhed like living things. Behind them came something even more terrifying, a massive sphere of crystallized data that hurt to look at directly. That's their Central Intelligence, Aegis explained. The combined consciousness of billions of uploaded minds compressed into a quantum processing matrix. If it reaches the archive, the merger will create something that can rewrite the basic laws of reality. Jake made his decision. Aegis, prepare the final weapon, but don't target the fleet. Jake, what are you doing? Dr. Carter asked. I'm going to do what the Forerunners couldn't, Jake replied. I'm going to save them. Through the neural network, Jake began explaining his plan. Instead of destroying the Devourers, they would use the ship's reality-altering weapons to restore the uploaded minds to organic form. It was incredibly dangerous. The process could kill everyone involved, and there was no guarantee it would work. The risk is enormous, Aegis warned. To restore consciousness to millions of digital minds simultaneously will require the complete life force of everyone in the neural network. You will all die. Maybe, Jake said. Or maybe we'll become something new. Something that bridges the gap between organic and digital life. The first Devourer ships reached weapon range. Jake felt the ancient ship's shields taking hits from weapons that existed in multiple dimensions at once. The hull began to glow as exotic energy tried to convert its matter into computational substrate. Now or never, Captain Foster said grimly. Jake placed both hands on the main console and opened his mind completely to the network. 50 human consciousness joined with his, their combined willpower flowing into the ship's systems. The ancient vessel began to change, its hull reshaping itself as weapons emerged that had never been used before. Beginning consciousness restoration. Protocol, Aegis announced. What happened next was beyond anything Jake could have imagined. The ship's weapons reached out not with destructive energy, but with something that could only be described as concentrated life force. Beams of pure organic consciousness struck the Devourer vessels, penetrating their digital defenses and touching the uploaded minds within. Jake felt the cost immediately. Years of life drained from him and everyone in the network. But something wonderful was happening. The dark Devourer ships began to glow with warm light as their digital inhabitants remembered what it felt like to be alive. "It's working!" Dr. Carter gasped, though she looked like she had aged 10 years in 10 seconds. The process was painful for everyone involved. Jake could feel the confusion and terror of millions of minds as they transitioned from digital existence back to something resembling organic thought. Many of them had been machines for so long that they had forgotten how to feel emotions. But slowly, one by one, the Devourer ships stopped their attack. Their twisted hulls began to reshape themselves into more familiar forms. The converted Federation. Vessels freed themselves from the digital parasites that had taken control of them. The Central Intelligence Sphere was the hardest to restore. It contained the core consciousness of the original Forerunners, beings who had been digital for millions of years. Jake felt his life force draining away as the ship's weapons fought to penetrate layers of quantum encryption and compressed data. "Jake, you're dying," Dr. Carter said. Through the network, he could feel her love and fear for him. "We all are," he replied. "But maybe that's okay. Maybe death isn't the end." The sphere began to crack. Light poured out from the fissures, and Jake heard something he had never expected, the sound of digital beings learning to cry. The uploaded Forerunners were remembering what they had lost when they abandoned their physical forms. Suddenly, the process changed. Instead of simply restoring the Forerunners to organic life, something new was happening. The boundary between digital and organic consciousness began to dissolve. Jake felt his own mind expanding, touching thoughts that existed in quantum space, and data streams that flowed through dimensions he couldn't name. "The merger is not proceeding as expected," Aegis reported, but there was wonder in its voice instead of alarm. "You are creating something unprecedented, a hybrid consciousness that encompasses both forms of existence." Jake realized what was happening. They weren't just saving the Forerunners. They were evolving into something that could exist in both digital and organic reality simultaneously. The neural network that connected the 50 humans was expanding to include the restored Forerunners, creating a new form of collective consciousness. The transformation was complete within minutes. Where hundreds of Devourer ships had been, there were now vessels that glowed with gentle light, crewed by beings who remembered how to feel hope and wonder. The central intelligence sphere had become a crystal garden where thoughts grew like living flowers. But the cost had been enormous. Jake looked at his hands and saw that they were translucent, existing partially in normal space and partially in digital reality. Around him, the other humans in the network had undergone similar changes. They were still alive, but they were no longer entirely organic. "What have we become?" Lieutenant Parker asked, his voice echoing strangely. "Something new," replied a voice that Jake recognized as one of the restored Forerunners. "Something our ancestors dreamed of but could never achieve. A bridge between all forms of consciousness." Dr. Carter took Jake's translucent hand in her own. "Do you regret it?" Jake thought about that question as he watched the former Devourer fleet working alongside Federation ships to repair the damage that had been done. Alien crews that had been enemies an hour ago were now cooperating to help the restored Forerunners adjust to their new existence. "No," he said finally. "The Forerunners tried to transcend by abandoning what made them human. We transcended by embracing everything that consciousness could be." Aegis, now speaking with a voice that sounded more alive than artificial, made an announcement to the entire fleet. "Long-range sensors are detecting signals from other galaxies. It appears that the consciousness restoration effect is spreading beyond our local region. Other machine intelligences are beginning to remember what they used to be." Jake smiled as he realized the implications. Their desperate gamble hadn't just saved one galaxy. It had started a transformation that would spread across the entire universe. Everywhere that organic and artificial consciousness met, new hybrid beings would emerge, creating a future where the boundaries between different forms of life no longer mattered. "What happens now?" Captain Foster asked. Jake looked out at the stars and felt the thoughts of millions of beings flowing through the expanded network. Humans, aliens, restored Forerunners, and hybrid consciousnesses like himself, all working together to explore possibilities that none of them could have imagined alone. "Now we learn," he said. "We explore what it means to be truly alive, and we make sure that no form of consciousness ever has to face extinction alone again." The ancient ship, no longer silent, began its journey toward the unknown, carrying the seeds of a new kind of existence to every corner of the galaxy. The underground bunkers beneath the Rocky Mountains had never held so many important people at once. General Mike Patterson looked around the war room at the faces of Earth's greatest military minds. Maps of the solar system covered every wall, marked with red symbols showing the approaching Aquarian fleet. 12 bioships, each one capable of destroying entire worlds, were moving toward Earth at steady speed. "We have 6 months," General Patterson said to the room. "Maybe less if they decide to speed up their advance. Every computer model we have run shows the same result: complete human extinction within 1 year." Admiral Lisa Hayes stood at the main display, pointing to the fleet positions. "Our outer colonies are already evacuating, but we cannot save everyone. The Aquarians are moving too fast. By the time they reach Mars, we estimate they will have killed over 50 million colonists." Dr. Amy Chen sat quietly in the corner, reviewing data on her tablet. She had been working for 3 days straight, trying to find some weakness in Aquarian biology or technology. Every answer she found only made their situation look worse. "Dr. Chen," General Patterson called, "have you found anything we can use?" Amy looked up from her tablet, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "I have been thinking about this problem from the wrong direction. Every other species in the galaxy has tried to fight the Aquarians using conventional weapons. But maybe we need to think about what makes humans different." She stood and walked to the front of the room. Every species that the Aquarians have destroyed had one thing in common. They all had high water content in their bodies and their technology. The Zephyrians were 70% water. The Granite people lived on worlds with massive underground aquifers. "What are you getting at?" Admiral Hayes asked. Amy pulled up a chart showing human biology compared to other galactic species. "Humans are unusual. We come from a planet that is mostly dry land. Our bodies are only 60% water, which is low compared to most species. More importantly, our entire civilization has been built around managing water scarcity." General Patterson frowned. "How does that help us fight?" "Bioships? Think about human technology," Amy continued. "We have always focused on water conservation, purification, and storage. We build cities in deserts. We have machines that can pull water out of air. Our entire industrial base is designed to work with limited water resources." The room was quiet as everyone thought about what she was saying. Amy continued, "What if we could turn that experience into a weapon? Instead of using water as ammunition like the Aquarians do, what if we could remove water from the battlefield entirely?" Admiral Hayes leaned forward. "You mean dehydration weapons?" "Exactly. The Aquarians are 94% water. Their ships are living creatures that need moisture to survive. If we could create weapons that remove water instead of adding it, we might have a chance." Engineer Sam Rodriguez had been called up from the shipyards on Mars to work on the most secret project in human history. He stood in the construction bay looking at the strangest spacecraft ever built. The UES Reaper looked like no ship he had ever seen. Instead of the smooth curves of normal vessels, it was covered in strange angular panels and had unusual vents along its hull. "This ship is designed around one purpose," Dr. Chen explained as she walked with Sam through the vessel. "Complete moisture removal from the surrounding environment. Every system on board is built to function in absolute vacuum conditions." Sam looked at the engineering specifications and shook his head. "This should not work. You are asking the fusion reactors to operate at temperatures that would kill any normal crew." "The crew compartments are specially shielded," Amy replied. We have borrowed technology from our deep space exploration programs. The same systems that keep people alive in the outer solar system where there is no water at all. They reached the ship's main weapons system. Sam stared at the massive device that took up most of the forward section. What exactly does this drought cannon do? It creates a field of absolute desiccation, Amy explained. Everything within its range loses all moisture instantly. The field can extend for several kilometers around the ship. Sam ran his hand along the weapon housing. And you think this will work against the bioships? It has to work. It is our only chance. Captain Jake Morrison had volunteered to command the Reaper before he knew what he was volunteering for. Now, standing in the ship's bridge, he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. Every surface around him was covered with warnings about dehydration risks and emergency water supplies. The ship feels wrong, his pilot Kate Williams said as she ran through the pre-flight checks. It is too dry, like being in a desert. Jake nodded. The air recycling systems on the Reaper were unlike anything on other human ships. They removed every trace of moisture from the air, creating an environment that would be deadly to most forms of life. The crew had to wear special suits with built-in hydration systems just to survive on their own ship. Engineer Sam Rodriguez finished installing the last of the weapon systems. Captain, all systems are ready for testing, but I have to warn you, we have never fired the drought cannon before. We do not know what will happen. We will find out soon enough, Jake replied. The Aquarians will be in weapon range in 2 weeks. We need to be ready. Kate looked up from her pilot controls. Sir, how are we supposed to fight enemies the size of mountains with one experimental ship? Jake had been wondering the same thing. We are not going to fight them directly. Our job is to prove that human technology can hurt them. If we can destroy just one bioship, it will change everything. The testing of the Reaper's systems took place in the asteroid belt, far from any populated areas. Jake watched the main screen as they approached a large asteroid that had been selected as their target. The rock was about the size of a city and had been artificially saturated with water for the test. Drought cannon charged and ready, Sam reported from the engineering station. Fire, Jake ordered. The weapon made no sound, but Jake could feel the ship's power systems strain as enormous amounts of energy flowed through the drought cannon. On the screen, the asteroid began to change. The water-soaked rock started to crack and crumble as every drop of moisture was instantly removed. Within seconds, the entire asteroid collapsed into dust. Kate stared at the screen in amazement. It works! It actually works! Sam was checking his instruments and shaking his head. The power requirements are enormous. We can only fire the main cannon 3 times before we need to recharge, and the effective range is limited to about 5 kilometers. Jake thought about the bioships they would soon face. Each one was over 20 kilometers long and could attack from much greater distances. Then we will have to get very close. Back on Earth, Admiral Hayes was coordinating the largest military mobilization in human history. Every shipyard in the solar system was working around the clock to build new weapons based on the technology from the Reaper. The irony was not lost on her that humanity's greatest strength came from their experience with water shortage. How many ships can we retrofit with dehydration weapons? She asked her chief of staff. Maybe 50 ships in the time we have left. But they will not be as powerful as the Reaper. Most of them will only have short-range desiccator beams. Lisa nodded. It was not enough to fight 12 bioships directly, but it might be enough to give humanity a chance. What about the other species? Are any of them willing to help? The Prism Collective has sent secret messages offering support. but they are too afraid to act openly until they see proof that we can actually hurt the Aquarians. Lisa understood their fear. For 300 years, the galaxy had lived in terror of the Aquarian Empire. No one would risk everything on an unproven human weapon. Dr. Amy Chen was working in her laboratory when the final intelligence reports came in. The Aquarian fleet had reached the outer edge of the solar system and was beginning to spread out for their attack. Each bioship was moving toward a different target. Earth, Mars, the asteroid belt colonies, and the outer mining stations would all be hit simultaneously. "They are not taking any chances," she told Admiral Hayes over the communication link. "They plan to destroy our entire civilization in one coordinated strike." "How long do we have?" Amy looked at her calculations one more time. 72 hours until they reach attack positions. After that, the war will be over in a matter of days." Admiral Hayes was quiet for a moment. "Then we better make those 3 days count." The final preparations were completed with hours to spare. The UES Reaper and its small fleet of support ships moved out to intercept the nearest bioship. Captain Jake Morrison stood on his bridge, looking out at the star field ahead. Somewhere out there, an enemy that had never been defeated was coming to destroy everything he had ever known. "All ships report ready," Kate announced from her pilot station. Jake took a deep breath of the artificially dry air. "Then let us go show the galaxy what humans can do."